Have you ever held a single coin in your hand and wondered, what if this tiny piece of copper could change everything? In 1940, as the United States stood on the edge of war and uncertainty, millions of small, reddish-brown coins rolled off the presses of the Philadelphia Mint. To most Americans, they were simple, common 1-cent pieces, used to buy a stick of gum, a cup of coffee, or a few minutes at the jukebox. But hidden among those billions, a few bare secrets so powerful, they could transform an ordinary collector into a legend. This is the story of the 1940 Lincoln 1-cent coin without a mint. Mark, how an unassuming relic of pre-war America has risen from pocket, changed to a numismatic masterpiece worth over $800,000, and if you think that sounds impossible, wait until you hear why. The year was 1940. Franklin D. Roosevelt had just been elected for a third term. The nation was healing from the Great Depression, but a storm was brewing across the Atlantic. In times like those, the Mint's work carried a quiet symbolism: stability, trust, endurance. The Lincoln 1-cent coin, bearing the humble image of Abraham Lincoln and the words, "In God We Trust," had become more than just currency. It was a promise that America would endure. Philadelphia, the mother mint, produced hundreds of millions of these 1-cent coins that year. No mint mark appeared beneath the date, because Philadelphia didn't use one at the time. That small omission, that lack of letter, has become a fascination in itself. Most of these coins were struck quickly and circulated endlessly, losing their sharp detail to years of handling pockets and drawers. But among them, a handful emerged that defied time. Coins with nearly perfect strikes, flawless surfaces, and deep red luster. Survivors in an age when survival itself was uncertain. And in the world of numismatics, survival is value. So why is a 1940 no-mint mark Lincoln 1-cent worth hundreds of thousands of dollars? The answer is layered in history, rarity, and something far more elusive: condition. You see, a coin's worth isn't just about its age or its design. It's about how it was preserved. A 1940 Lincoln cent with even a trace of oxidation or a dull patina might be worth only a few cents. But a coin with its original fiery copper brilliance, untouched by air, human hands, or time, becomes something transcendent. The most prized examples, graded as Mint State 67 or higher by professional services like PCGS or NGC, command astronomical prices at auction. In one instance, a 1940 Lincoln 1-cent from Philadelphia sold for nearly $841,000, not because it was an error, not because it had a missing design element, but because it was perfect. Absolute perfection, frozen in copper, from a year when the world was anything but perfect. Let's pause here for a moment. What makes collectors chase something like this? Why do people pay the price of a luxury home for a coin that once bought a stick of gum? The answer lies deep within human nature. Coin collecting isn't just a hobby, it's a dialogue between past and future. Every collector, consciously or not, is searching for connection. To a story, to a time, to a piece of themselves. The 1940 no-mint mark, Lincoln 1-cent, represents stability in chaos, artistry in mass production, and wealth hidden in plain sight. It whispers to the collector, "What else could you be overlooking?" And that whisper is irresistible. But let's peel back another layer, one most people overlook. In the 1940s, coin production in Philadelphia faced incredible pressure. Metal supply chains were tightening as the nation prepared for war. Quality control varied from press to press, and dies wore quickly under the strain of heavy output. That's why a perfect strike from that year is such a miracle. The chances of a flawless coin surviving from a run of hundreds of millions? Infinitesimal. Even rarer still are examples struck with subtle anomalies, tiny die cracks, doubled features, or off-center strikes. To the untrained eye, they're imperfections. But to a seasoned numismatist, they're fingerprints of history, unique signatures that can multiply a coin's value tenfold. One particularly famous specimen, discovered in the 1980s, showed microscopic doubling in the word liberty. The collector who recognized it didn't just find a coin, he found a legacy. There's something poetic about that, isn't there? In a world where everything feels digital, temporary, and mass-produced, A small copper disc from 1940 becomes a symbol of permanence. The patina of time gives it character. Its imperfections tell a story, and in that story, collectors find meaning. Ask any serious numismatist, and they'll tell you, the thrill isn't only in the possession, it's in the pursuit. The hours spent inspecting coins under magnification, the quiet heartbeat when you spot a variation that others missed, the realization that history has chosen you as its next guardian. Because make no mistake, rare coins aren't just investments. They're inheritances. They outlive us. They whisper our values forward through generations. That's why a coin like the 1940 no-mint mark Lincoln 1 cent isn't just valued in dollars. It's valued in legacy. Here's something few people know. During the 1940s, the composition of the Lincoln cent was changing subtly. Although the official formula remained 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc, small wartime variations occurred in trace elements, affecting the color and texture. Collectors can often detect these differences by tone alone. Some pieces glow with deep crimson, others with soft brown hues or iridescent reflection. To the market, these tonal differences can mean thousands of dollars. A coin with strong red coloration, graded as red by certification, standards can triple or even quadruple in value over a coin of identical strike but duller hue. That's why when a 1940 Philadelphia Lincoln 1 cent emerged in pristine red, full luster shimmering like new copper wire, it ignites a bidding war. Now, imagine being the person who finds one. You're sorting through an old inherited jar, coins your grandfather collected or maybe just saved without thinking. You spot a 1940 Lincoln cent and it gleams differently. The surfaces are clean, the edges sharp, the fields mirror-like. You decide to have it graded. Weeks later, you receive the result. MS 67 red, then comes the shock. Auction houses start calling. Emails flood in. That coin you almost spent on coffee could now be worth nearly $1 million. And suddenly, you understand what every collector dreams about, the discovery. Of course, not every coin holds that kind of fortune. But the psychology of the hunt, the possibility that one might, is what fuels this timeless pursuit. Collectors today aren't just investors. They're historians, storytellers, detectives, and the market has noticed. Over the past decade, demand for high-grade Lincoln cents has surged, driven by both nostalgia and strategic wealth preservation. As inflation erodes the value of paper assets, tangible relics, especially those tied to America's story, have gained renewed respect. Coin funds, private investors, and legacy planners are entering the market not just for profit, but for permanence. In an uncertain economy, a tangible piece of American metal feels safer than a line of code on a screen. And among all those coins, the 1940 no-mint mark Lincoln. 1 cent remains a beacon, a humble reminder that sometimes the most valuable treasures are the ones we overlook. Here's a curious twist. Even though Philadelphia struck over 500 million of these coins, the number of top-condition survivors is estimated to be fewer than 200. Think about that. Out of hundreds of millions, only a few dozen might still exist in near-perfect, mint-fresh state. That's rarer than many gold coins, and yet they're hidden in boxes, collections, or estate drawers across America, quietly waiting for rediscovery. Every collector watching this right now might already own one. They just haven't looked closely enough. So, what does this all mean for you? It means opportunity doesn't always look like gold or silver. Sometimes it's a humble copper coin, tarnished by time but rich in story. It means history still hides in our homes, in jars, in inherited collections. And it means that those who take the time to learn, to look deeper, can still uncover treasures that others overlook. Because the real magic of coin collecting isn't about metal, it's about transformation. The transformation of curiosity into knowledge, of history into wealth, of an ordinary object into a legacy. So the next time you see a 1940 Lincoln 1 cent without a mint mark, don't dismiss it. Hold it to the light. Study its details. Imagine the hands it's passed through, the history it's witnessed. Ask yourself, what if this is one of the few that survived perfectly? What if this is my discovery? Because every great fortune begins with a moment of curiosity, and sometimes that moment fits in the palm of your hand. The 1940 no-mint mark Lincoln 1 cent, born in the heart of a turbulent America, forgotten for decades, now reborn as one of the most desired treasures in modern numismatics. From a symbol of everyday commerce to a cornerstone of legacy, it reminds us that even the smallest pieces of history can hold the greatest value. And perhaps, just perhaps, your next priceless find is already waiting in your pocket. Yes, a simple Abraham Lincoln 1 cent coin from 1946, struck in Philadelphia with no mint mark, has shaken the world of numismatics with a value that once climbed beyond $835,000 at private auction. But why? Why would a post-war cent, seemingly identical to the billions made, be coveted like a lost relic of the nation's wealth? The answer lies not only in its metal and markings, but in the invisible hands of history that shaped it. The year was 1946. The United States stood tall, victorious after World War II, yet scarred by its cost. Copper had been rationed, melted into shells and wire for the war effort. During the conflict, the U.S. Mint experimented with steel-plated zinc cents, those dull, silvery coins of 1943 that confused countless shopkeepers and children alike. When peace returned, so did the familiar reddish glow of copper. But the transition wasn't smooth. The mint had leftover steel planchets, experimental dies, and worn machinery being recalibrated after years of wartime production. In this storm of change, minting anomalies, tiny, nearly invisible, were born. Among these were a handful of 1946 Lincoln 1 cent coins that defied expectation. Some carried no mint mark, suggesting they hailed from the Philadelphia Mint. But closer inspection hinted at mysteries deeper than missing letters. Collectors have long whispered of Philadelphia cents that shimmered, differently under light, struck on leftover bronze or transitional planchets. Others seemed to bear faint traces of repunched dates or doubled features on Lincoln's profile. But the most shocking discovery came when a private collector, sifting through an old tobacco tin of wartime coins, noticed a peculiar tone, deeper, more lustrous, almost like gold. That coin, authenticated and graded under intense scrutiny, would later command $835,000 in a private sale. The story spread quietly at first, through collector conventions and small-town coin clubs. It wasn't the kind of tale you'd see on the evening news. But in the world of serious numismatists, it was an earthquake, because it wasn't just about the coin's metal or grade. It was about what it represented, a mistake that shouldn't exist, surviving when logic said it couldn't. If you think about it, every rare coin carries a kind of paradox. The more ordinary it looks, the more dangerous it becomes to ignore. Imagine this. Somewhere in your family's attic, in an old coffee jar or drawer of forgotten change, a 1946 Lincoln cent sits quietly, untouched for decades. Its edges slightly dulled, its color aged into that rich reddish-brown patina collectors dream about. To the untrained eye, it's worth 1 cent. To the right buyer, it could fund a retirement, pay off a home, or change a life's direction forever. But here's the twist. You'll never know its worth by sight alone. These coins demand scrutiny, the kind of deep, patient examination that separates collectors from casual observers. Under magnification, a true numismatist looks for the dance of imperfections, the die cracks that tell a story of machinery under stress, the doubling on the date that speaks of hurried wartime minting, or the subtle metallic variations hinting at leftover alloys from prior years. It's a treasure hunt for the soul as much as the wallet. Have you ever wondered why people risk fortunes for coins that can fit on a fingertip? Because coins are the DNA of civilization. They outlive empires, presidents, and even paper money. Every Abraham Lincoln 1 cent coin struck after 1909 carries not just Lincoln's face, but a whisper of America's identity, its values, its struggles, its constant reinvention. The 1946 Philadelphia cent, in particular, stands at the crossroads of that story. It's the first full year after the war, when hope returned, when industry surged, and when America began dreaming big again. Yet within that optimism lay chaos in the mint. transitional materials, new dyes, and exhausted machines. So when you hold a 1946 cent, you're not just holding metal. You're holding evidence of rebirth, minted by hands still trembling from the memory of war. And yet, why are some of these coins worth more than gold? Why do investors and collectors alike chase them with such obsession? Because rarity in numismatics is never just about numbers. It's about survivability, story, and timing. Tens of millions of 1946 Lincoln cents were minted, but only a microscopic fraction show the anomalies that make them legendary. Some were struck on leftover bronze planchets from earlier years. Others exhibit doubled dies, misaligned strikes, or ghost-like remnants of mint marks that were never meant to exist. The coin that sold for over $800,000 was believed to have been struck on an experimental transitional planchet, possibly intended for testing purposes before official copper production resumed. That alone makes it a tangible fragment of U.S. mint history, one of those happy accidents collectors dream of discovering once in a lifetime. There's also a deeper, psychological pull at work. Coin collectors, especially those who invest, are driven by two emotions, nostalgia and control. Nostalgia connects them to the past, a time when coins jingled in pockets, when craftsmanship mattered, when history was minted in metal, not digital code. Control, on the other hand, comes from owning something finite in an infinite world. While markets fluctuate and paper currencies lose value, a genuine 1946 no-mint mark Lincoln cent with verifiable anomalies becomes a fortress of wealth, portable, private, and permanent. That's why seasoned investors are quietly shifting part of their portfolios into numismatic assets. It's not just about collecting, it's about legacy. You can't pass down a stock certificate to your grandchildren and expect awe. But pass down a coin that survived the mint's post-war chaos, a coin that could buy a house, and you've handed them a story they'll tell for generations. Here's where the mystery deepens. Not all 1946 no-mint mark cents are created equal. The vast majority are common, worth only face value or a few dollars in pristine condition. The valuable ones carry subtle markers, a slightly off metal composition, die doubling on the date, or minute differences in strike pressure. Experts often test the metal composition to detect bronze planchets with higher tin or zinc content, which indicate transitional pieces. Some coins also weigh a fraction less than standard copper cents, a clue to their rarity, but even professional graders occasionally miss the signs. That's why collectors are obsessed with second opinions, X-ray fluorescence tests, and deep spectral scans. In the upper echelons of coin collecting, authenticity isn't proven by appearance, it's proven by science. And then there's the art of timing. Coin values rise and fall with cultural waves. A coin might sit dormant for years, then suddenly skyrocket when media attention or a major auction reignites interest. The $835,000 sale wasn't just a reflection of rarity, it was the spark that turned a whisper into legend. After that sale, the market for mid-century Lincoln cents saw a surge. Search traffic spiked. Coin roll hunters began combing through 1940s rolls like gold prospectors. Dealers reported being flooded with inquiries. How can I tell if mine's the one? That's the beauty and the madness of the numismatic world. It takes only one discovery to rewrite what collectors thought they knew. Picture this. You're at a local flea market. A vendor sells you a small cardboard flip with an old coin taped inside, a 1946 Lincoln cent, worn but warm to the touch. Maybe you buy it for nostalgia, or maybe it's just a hunch. Later, at home, under your loupe and light, something looks off. The date seems doubled. The rim has a strange raised edge. The sound it makes when dropped isn't quite the usual copper ping. What would you do? Would you shrug it off? Or would you chase the possibility that you've just stumbled upon a six-figure relic? That's how it happens. Not in banks or museums, but in quiet, private moments of discovery. Every collector remembers their first coin that made their heart race. There's a saying among numismatists. The rarest coins aren't found. They reveal themselves when you're ready to recognize them. Maybe that's why the story of the 1946 no-mint mark Lincoln cent resonates so deeply. It reminds us that greatness often hides in plain sight. waiting for someone curious enough to look closer. And maybe it's also a metaphor for America itself, a nation built on the idea that even the smallest, most unassuming things can carry immense value when you understand their history. So, the next time you come across an old jar of coins, don't dismiss it. Don't assume every cent is just a cent, because within that copper sea could lie a survivor from 1946, a relic from the first peaceful year after global chaos. Carrying secrets no machine could replicate again. It might be tarnished, scratched, even a little forgotten. But remember, the rarest treasures rarely announce themselves. In a world obsessed with speed and surface, coin collecting asks us to slow down and see, to study, to imagine the hands that made, spent, and saved each piece. And in doing so, you're not just collecting metal, you're collecting stories, power, and time itself. So whether you're an investor seeking tangible legacy or a dreamer chasing whispers of the past, the 1946 no-mint mark Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin stands as proof that fortune still hides in the ordinary. Somewhere out there, one more of these coins might be waiting to be found, perhaps in a jar, a drawer, or a forgotten pocket. The question is, when it reveals itself, will you recognize it? Because sometimes, the difference between a penny and a fortune is simply knowing what you're holding. The year was 1955. America was humming with post-war optimism. The highways were new, television was king, and a young rock and roll singer named Elvis Presley was beginning to shake the nation's spirit. In Denver, the mint's heavy presses thundered day and night, spitting out copper coins by the millions. Each bore the stoic profile of Abraham Lincoln, the 16th president, a symbol of integrity and endurance. But in one fateful batch, something went wrong. As the dies were prepared for striking, one obverse die, the side bearing Lincoln's portrait and the word liberty, shifted ever so slightly. A misalignment between the die and the planche created what numismatists now call a doubled die error. The letters, the date, even the president's image appeared to shimmer, ghost-like, as if the coin carried two realities at once. Most of these errors were caught and destroyed. But not all. A handful slipped through the quality checks, tucked into the streams of commerce, passed from bank to bakery, from gas station to grocery store. People spent them, never realizing that they were holding one of the rarest and most mysterious, minting errors in American history. Here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. The 1955 double die from the Philadelphia Mint is legendary, one of the most famous errors ever. But the 1955 Denver Mint issue? That's the ghost of the collection world. For decades, it's been whispered about among serious collectors, those who track auction records, who study die varieties under microscopes, who know that the real treasures are rarely the ones you see in glossy magazines. A 1955 Denver Mint Lincoln cent, showing a dramatic die error or unique minting anomaly, has crossed auction blocks with figures that defy belief. Numbers like $829,000 attached to a coin born from a mistake. Imagine, a coin that once rested in a dusty pocket, now worth more than most homes. But here's what few understand about coins like these. Their value isn't just about rarity, it's about story. Every coin has a voice, but few speak louder than the ones that weren't supposed to exist. Collectors, especially those who've been in the game long enough to feel its emotional rhythm, know that chasing coins isn't about greed. It's about connection. Connecting to a moment in time, to a craftsman's unnoticed slip, to a piece of history that somehow survived against all odds. The 1955 D. Lincoln cent embodies that. It's the physical manifestation of imperfection turned into immortality. Think of it this way. In a world obsessed with digital assets and fleeting trends, these small copper discs endure. They outlast economies, presidencies, even generations. They remind us that legacy isn't built in a day. It's forged, struck, and circulated until its story becomes undeniable. The market has felt this shift in recent years. As inflation eats at modern currency, tangible heritage has become a new gold rush. Rare American coins, especially mid-century errors like this 1955 Denver minting, are quietly being scooped up by investors who understand that scarcity and narrative together create unstoppable value. We've seen the proof: private sales, hushed deals, auction houses stunned when a 1-cent coin jumps from a modest 5 figures into the realm of hundreds of thousands. And those who once dismissed coin collecting as an old man's hobby are beginning to realize this is legacy wealth disguised as pocket change. You might be wondering, how do you know if you have one? Well, this is where the real thrill begins. The genuine 1955 Denver Mint Lincoln. Cent showing a double die or off-center strike will display subtle distortions. Look closely at the inscriptions, "In God We Trust" and "Liberty." The letters might appear shadowed, as if the coin itself were trembling. Under magnification, the doubling reveals itself like a secret signature left by time. But here's the danger. The market is flooded with counterfeits, cleverly manipulated fakes made to mimic the genuine error. True experts, those who live and breathe numismatics, can spot the difference through the weight, the strike sharpness, and the texture of the copper alloy. For those who hold one verified by a reputable grading service, say PCGS or NGC, the certificate is more than paper. It's proof of legacy. Every serious collector eventually faces a crossroads. Do you chase the coins everyone talks about, or do you hunt the ones that people whisper about? The 1955 D Lincoln Cent belongs to the latter category, the whispered legends. The kind of coin that surfaces once in a generation, sending ripples through collector circles. It's the reason seasoned investors attend auctions with quiet hearts and trembling hands. Because sometimes, history decides to show up in the smallest form imaginable, a copper disc, smaller than a quarter. That can change a life. But why does this matter now in 2025? Because history repeats itself. Every major surge in the rare coin market has followed periods of uncertainty. The 1970s inflation spike, the tech bubble, the pandemic years. In each case, tangible assets, coins, precious metals, fine art, surged as people sought something real. And once again, we're seeing collectors turn toward mid-20th century coins, especially those struck in error. The demand for mint-state examples, especially with verified provenance, has skyrocketed. Auction catalogs that once listed a few notable cents now dedicate entire sections to varieties of the 1955 D Lincoln Cent. Investors aren't just buying coins, they're buying the right to own a story that will outlive them. But let's step back for a moment. What makes someone pay nearly $1 million for a coin they'll likely never spend, never use, and perhaps never even hold with bare hands? It's not greed. It's reverence. When you buy a coin like this, you're not purchasing metal. You're acquiring a moment that slipped through history's fingers. You're honoring the mint worker who caught an error too late, the banker who passed it along unknowingly, the child who may have spent it on candy without realizing he held a fortune. That's what numismatics really is. A grand treasure hunt guided by fate and patience. And here's the paradox that fascinates collectors the most. The more people search for the 1955 D Lincoln Cent, the rarer it becomes. Because every discovery locks another one away in private hands, vaulted, protected, and cherished. What circulates in the open market diminishes year by year. That scarcity drives both emotion and price. Each public sale becomes a spectacle, a brief window where the world is reminded that even a 1-cent coin can rewrite the rules of value. Imagine yourself walking through an estate sale, boxes of old coins, a few tarnished pieces, the faint smell of history in the air. Your hand brushes against a copper coin, and there it is, a 1955 D with subtle doubling on Lincoln's face. Your heart skips. Because in that moment, you're not just holding copper, you're holding destiny. That's the dream that fuels the entire collector community. The quiet hope that something extraordinary lies hidden in the ordinary. That maybe, just maybe, you'll be the one to uncover what others missed. Even if you never find one, understanding its story changes how you see every coin that passes through your hand. You begin to notice the small details, The serif of a letter, the crispness of a rim, the alignment of the date. You start to realize that every coin, no matter how common, is a fragment of a grand American chronicle, a story struck in metal, designed to last longer than memory. And that's the heart of collecting. It's not about hoarding. It's about preserving. It's about telling the next generation, this was once just a penny, but now it tells a story about America, about human error, about resilience, about the magic of chance. So, when you hear that a 1955 D Mint Mark Lincoln 1-cent coin sold for over $829,000, remember, it's not luck. It's the inevitable rise of meaning meeting rarity. Because in every collector's journey, there's a turning point. A moment when you stop chasing profit and start chasing history. When you realize the true wealth of a coin isn't in its market price, but in the sense of wonder it awakens. 1 cent. That's all it took to remind us that even the smallest pieces of metal can hold the weight of centuries. And perhaps that's the real message of the 1955 D, Lincoln cent. That mistakes, when preserved, become masterpieces. That the line between flaw and fortune is thinner than we imagine. And that sometimes the greatest treasures are already in our possession. We just haven't looked closely enough. So the next time you reach for spare change, pause. Feel the texture, study the date, look closer than you ever have before, because history doesn't always sit in museums. Sometimes it hides in your pocket, and if you're lucky, just lucky enough, you might find a 1955 D Lincoln 1-cent coin whispering its secret story of copper, chance and legacy worth far more than gold. 1958 was the twilight of a design that had already become an American icon. For nearly half a century, the humble Lincoln wheat ear reverse, those twin stalks framing the nation's promise, had jingled through the Great Depression, 2 world wars, and the birth of the atomic age. Most coins from that year were produced at the Philadelphia Mint, the nation's oldest and most historic coining facility, proudly stamping its creations without a mint mark. They were ordinary in every sense, or so it seemed. But numismatics, much like history itself, hides its legends in the smallest of details. Because in 1958, somewhere deep within the Philadelphia Mint, a mistake occurred. A misalignment between dies, a duplication in engraving, an unintentional echo of craftsmanship that wasn't meant to exist. And from that subtle slip of human hands emerged one of the rarest Lincoln 1-cent coins in American history, the 1958 double-die obverse. Now, at first glance, it looks just like every other copper cent of its time. But look closer, at the word liberty, at In God We Trust, and at the date 1958 itself. You'll see something hauntingly beautiful, a doubled impression, each letter shadowed by a ghostly twin, as if the coin carries 2 histories layered upon one another. Only 3 confirmed examples of this error have ever been authenticated by the professional coin grading service. Just 3 out of hundreds of millions struck. Each one a survivor, a microscopic marvel of metal and time. And when one of them surfaced at auction, the numismatic world held its breath. The hammer fell at over $819,000 for a single Lincoln 1-cent coin with no mint mark. Think about that. A coin that could have bought you a piece of bubble gum in 1958, now capable of buying an entire home. But why such value? Why does the world of coin collecting, a community built on metal and minting, treat this small copper piece like a relic of royalty? Because rarity alone doesn't make a legend. Its meaning that does. Collectors see in this coin a paradox, the marriage of flaw and perfection. The doubling error that would normally mark a failure instead became a signature, a fingerprint of fate. It tells a story not of machinery, but of human imperfection immortalized in copper. And for those who invest in legacy, who collect not for quick profit but for permanence, such stories are priceless. But here's where the plot thickens. You see, the 1958 double-die obverse isn't just valuable for its rarity. It represents the closing chapter of an era. 1 year later, in 1959, the wheat ear reverse was retired, replaced by the Lincoln Memorial design, a modern, architectural tribute to the 16th president. This change marked the end of America's longest-running cent design, and with it, the symbolic close of a post-war chapter in U.S. coinage. So, when collectors hold that 1958 1-cent coin, they're not just holding copper. They're holding the last heartbeat of the wheat ear legacy, and perhaps, unknowingly, the rarest echo of its existence. Now imagine this. You're sifting through a forgotten jar of change left by your grandparents, coins tarnished by time but rich with memory. Among the dull browns and fading reds, you pick up a 1958 piece. No mint mark. Ordinary at first glance. But then, as light glances across its surface, you notice the letters seem doubled, slightly off. Your pulse quickens. You pull out a magnifying glass. You align the rim under the glow of a desk lamp. And there it is. Liberty. And in God we trust shimmering with that unmistakable doubled strike. In that instant, you're no longer just a hobbyist. You've become the discoverer of buried treasure, a modern-day prospector mining history's leftovers for golden opportunity. That moment, that mix of disbelief, thrill, and reverence is the emotional core of coin collecting. The possibility that within something so small lies a story vast enough to alter your life. But make no mistake, finding one of these elusive coins is like finding lightning in a bottle. Most experts agree that all known examples are already accounted for, each locked behind layers of security in private collections or museum vaults. Still, the possibility lingers because history loves to surprise us. Even today, previously unknown rarities continue to surface, often from estate sales, inherited collections, or dusty boxes tucked away in basements. Each discovery reignites the collective imagination of the numismatic world, reminding us that not every secret has been uncovered. Could another 1958 doubled die still be out there? Perhaps. And for collectors, perhaps is enough to keep the hunt alive. Here's a secret few outside the inner circle of coin dealers understand. The coin market doesn't just follow supply and demand, it follows story. When a coin has a story that captures emotion, mystery, beauty, tragedy, or triumph, its value compounds far beyond metal or mintage. Investors buy coins like this not just for profit, but for prestige, legacy, and the thrill of possessing something virtually unattainable. That's why the elite of the collecting world compete for pieces like the 1958 no mint mark Lincoln 1 cent with the double die obverse. It's not just a coin. It's an heirloom of American error, a fragment of minting mythology. Every great numismatic collection needs its crown jewel. And this is the one most will only dream of owning. But let's step back and consider what this phenomenon teaches us. Coin collecting isn't just about accumulation. It's about observation. The true collector develops an eye, a sensitivity to nuance, a reverence for craftsmanship. They study patinas, die marks, and subtle variances that others overlook. They don't see coins. They see stories etched in metal, and sometimes those stories are worth millions. It's a quiet form of rebellion in a world obsessed with digital currency and instant gratification. To hold a 1958 copper cent is to feel permanence, the weight of something that outlasted the headlines, the presidents, the trends, and even the paper money that surrounded it. It's a reminder that wealth, real wealth, is often built on what others discard. Now, here's a question to stir your imagination. What if the most valuable coin you'll ever own isn't locked in a vault, but resting in a forgotten coffee can in your attic? What if, while others scroll through cryptocurrency charts, your fortune lies in a 2-inch circle of copper minted before you were born? For some, that's just a dream. For others, it's already reality, because every once in a while history reaches out, quietly, unexpectedly, and rewards those who were paying attention. And that's the deeper message of the 1958 no mint mark Lincoln 1 cent coin. It's not just a numismatic anomaly. It's a parable about value itself, about how imperfections, when rare enough, become beauty. How the smallest errors can leave the greatest. Legacies, the Philadelphia mint workers who struck. That coin likely never knew their day's labor would someday produce one of the most coveted pieces in U.S. history. They couldn't have guessed that a misalignment of steel and pressure would create a coin that future generations would pursue like a holy Grail. Yet here we are, 70 years later, still talking about it, still searching for it, still dreaming about the day we might uncover another. So if you ever find yourself with a handful of old coins, slow down, feel the edges, examine the details. Because the next great discovery in American numismatics may not come from a high-tech lab or a billion-dollar vault. It may come from you. That's the timeless allure of collecting, the fusion of knowledge, intuition, and fate. Each coin tells a story. Some tell of empires and revolutions. Others, like the 1958 Lincoln 1 cent, whisper of error turned to excellence, of a nation's craftsmanship frozen in a rare moment of imperfection. And if you listen closely enough, you just might hear that whisper calling your name. The market may fluctuate. Gold may rise and fall. Digital trends may come and go. But the value of legacy, of owning a tangible fragment of America's story, remains unshakable. The 1958 double-die cent is more than a coin. It's a testament to patience, to observation, to the eternal truth that sometimes the smallest things hold the greatest worth. So keep your eyes open, because the next time you hear the clink of loose change, you might just be holding history's most valuable mistake.